Gentlemen and female gentlemen, it is time to get battle-scarred and wounded. Your boy, Lord Nuxanor, will consume all lore, and that includes Lovecraft's cosmic horror, the story of Call of Cthulhu by Wendigoon. So, Wendigoon dropped this video, which is great, because I am working on a big, fat main channel video talking about the immortal horror of Lovecraft. And, I have gone over the basic gist of all the stories. I've looked at the lore intensely, and I am here to jump right into the actual story of Call of the Cthulhu, probably the most iconic Lovecraft story of all time. Your boy needs to consume this lore for the purposes of my main channel, and also for the purposes of consuming all lore. Now, Wendigoon did not title this correctly the first time. He called it Lovecraft. Which is why we have this comment, Lovecraft, the slightly more romantic brother of Lovecraft. Yeah, so ironically, he spelled it Lovecraft in the beginning. So, are you ready for some eldritch horror? Are you ready for some fear? All right, well, I hope so, because it's time to consume the lore. Let's see if this truly scares the shit out of us. It's Wendigooner time.
Of such great...
Oh, by the way, also very exciting random side tangent that you probably don't care about at all. I'm planning a collab with Wendigoon now, and it is going to be fucking awesome!
Powers or beings, there may be conceivably a survival of a hugely remote period when consciousness was manifested, perhaps, in shapes and forms long since withdrawn before the tide of advancing humanity, forms of which poetry and legend alone have caught a flying memory and called them gods, monsters, mythical beings of all sorts of kinds. Algernon Blackwood.
Who the fuck is Algernon Blackwood? All right, well, maybe, listen, this is why we're doing the lore dive. We gotta understand the Call of Cthulhu lore, baby. We gotta do it. We gotta. How else will I understand Elden Ring lore without first understanding Cthulhu lore? All right, well, this is gonna be crazy. I'm surprised Wendigoon didn't start with his classic YouTube intro. You know, he normally doesn't start with an excerpt from a novel. He normally starts with, "What's up, my gooners? It's gooning time!" And then he proceeds to goon all over the place. I'm surprised he didn't start like the usual way this time.
This is the opening quote of what is undoubtedly one of the most infamous horror stories ever told. That story, of course, because you saw the title, is Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, and it is one of the most infamous horror stories ever told. So my video that I'm working on the main channel, just the immortal horror of Lovecraft, that's the workshop title right now. The reason why it's taking me so long to make it is because I'm looking for every reference to Cthulhu's mythos ever. I have like a 15-minute segment in the video that's already recorded that is just talking about Cthulhu, different Lovecraft mythos references in different media. Everywhere from anime to comics to movies. To just show you the influence that this has on the entire genre. On the entire media industry. It is such a Lovecraftian work. It's brilliant. Somehow this transcended its own story and is really everywhere. But anyway, you could tell Wendigoon's trying very hard to beat the Nazi allegations in this video. He's not wearing a Hawaiian shirt or anything.
It's hard to argue that H.P. Lovecraft is not an influential writer.
He is. Did you even see what he named his cat? That's shit for the ages.
But what I think can be argued is that more people are familiar with the impacts of his stories than they are the stories themselves.
Facts. Facts. That's me. Even the dating game. I mentioned the dating game. You don't understand the depths of references. I went looking for references to Lovecraft just to prove the indelible horror of his story. Even I was shocked by some of the shit that I found out. Like, bro, they quote Cthulhu, like the summoning shit in Lovecraft. They quote that in Digimon. All right, I don't want to spoil my whole fucking video, but so anyway, we gotta grab the lore of the actual book, Call of Cthulhu.
For example, I'm sure most of you have heard of Cthulhu or concepts of things like cosmic horror, which a lot of people point Lovecraft as the originator of. But
the originator? He is the godfather of cosmic horror. It's insane that cosmic horror became an entire genre at this point. Look at Elden Ring as an example, okay? Elden Ring's on the mind. I've been loving it. I've been playing it. I got into beef with somebody because they called Elden Ring woke because Michaela is having incestual gay sex with his brother, which isn't what happens, but I got into beef over that. So I got Elden Ring on the mind, okay? Elden Ring is on the mind, and it is really a cosmic horror story. Like, the way all these people and gods are in the world, and demigods are all influenced by these outer cosmic entities that don't actually have form. Like, it is insane how impactful Lovecraft is.
I guarantee that far fewer of you
Incest is not woke. Speak for yourself!
have actually read the guy's stuff. Why is that? Why is Lovecraft more remembered for his concepts and ideas rather than the narratives he told?
Good
and on
question.
top of that, are those narratives worth reading, and is it scary? All of that we're going to look at today, because I want to go through the story, talk about some of Lovecraft's impact, or at least Call of Cthulhu's impact on horror as a whole, and all in all, talk about why I find this book to be so interesting.
Now, as you know, I, Lord Nuxanor, consumer of all lore. I've already done, like, the lore dives for the world building of Lovecraft's cosmic shit, as well as all the mythos of the different characters. When I think of Cthulhu, I think, not my proudest wank, but a nut's a nut.
I'm also...
I mean, someone in my chat said that. That's not for me. But what I mean is, it is a really interesting world and a brilliant division of different realities and consciousnesses, and that's all interesting. But the stories itself never really spoke to me, which is why I never really dove too deep in the actual stories. So really glad we're doing the Gooner edition.
Trying out a lot of new things this video. I have this new green screen room I've been building out.
New green screen room? What, the classic Wendigooner whiteboard is gone?
Finally holding a lapel mic that I'm too afraid to actually use as a lapel because I'm convinced I'll mess it up somehow. So good job. You guys finally bullied me enough for my shotgun mic, so.
Don't give in to the mob. Don't do it.
Thanks for that. So we'll see how this video
God, I love Wendigoon
goes. But I, for one, am excited to talk about the unknown, cosmic, and infinite horror of Call of Cthulhu.
All right.
But you know what's even better than forbidden knowledge and
Is it the sponsor of this week's video?
forgotten nightmares? I mean,
I feel like a lot of things are better than Infinite Horror and Forgotten Nightmares.
I would hope so. I'm wearing the shirt.
Oh.
That is right. Today's sponsor, AG1.
Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
We are going to go ahead and get into it. But
Honestly, can you think of anything more cosmic and horrifying than Raid Shadow Legends? This is the real question.
as always, thank you for watching. The first lines of the story tell us that the things we are about to read were found among the papers of the late Francis Wayland Thurston of Boston. So hopeful beginnings. Everything we're about to read is from a dead guy.
Nice.
We do have that quote from Algernon Blackwood.
Listen, the thing I like about dead people are they can't fuck up anymore. All of us live lives of infinite fuck-uppery that we keep doing. Every day, every week, every month, there's a new fuck-up that we've done. Look at Boogie2988. He started off as this wholesome dude. He ended up losing money in crypto, lying to his audience, scamming his audience, lying about cancer, probably lying about being abused. That's my headcanon for the future. This man is a living fuck up every single day. But once Boogie's dead, and I hope he has a long and fruitful life, hope he makes it to his 50s, on God, he will no longer be fucking up after that. So you gotta look it up. You gotta look at it this way.
That I opened
Boogie thinks he's Johann Liebert. Oh no.
the video with. Algernon Blackwood spent a lot of his life detailing stories about different ancient cultures and myths, and then kind of combining them and publishing them for a lot of people to see. One of those being the Wendigo, so, you know, I appreciate it.
Hey.
But our first words from the author, from Francis himself, kind of paint a picture of where this story's going.
The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity.
That's such an interesting perspective, though. Like, I know that, that's a really, really interesting perspective. The idea that ignorance is bliss. The idea of the amount of shit that you don't know is good. If you knew all the horrors of everything in existence, it would fuck you up. So it is a blessing that we live on our placid island of ignorance. That's a good-ass quote.
And it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But someday, the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation
or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age.
Yeah, dude, honestly, just as you continue to evolve, as you continue to learn more, like, I'll be honest with you, I think Lovecraft was kind of spinning with this one. Like, if you think about it, depression is skyrocketing. The amount of people depressed today is, maybe I'm wrong, because we didn't care about mental health as a society as much 100 years ago, but 100 years ago, you don't, like, I'll talk to my grandfather, and he'll say, yeah, depression somehow wasn't a thing when he was a kid. And it's like, obviously it was, but somehow it is so huge today. Everyone is suffering from mental health issues today. And you gotta wonder, what's the cause? Is it just more knowledge? Is it more time? Is it less feeling of accomplishment?
Now, already we have some of the concepts that make Lovecraft so famous.
Mm-hmm.
The ideas of not...
That an actual idea is dangerous to you. It's almost like an anti-meme. If the idea alone can hurt you.
Our nightmares being these new manifestations, or these beasts that we conjure up in our minds. Instead, there's some kind of collective forgotten memory. This building off of the Blackwood quote that the story opens with. But then for Francis to say here that not only are we building off of some collective nightmare we've forgotten, but that it's a good thing, we can't really put it together, paints a picture of what's going to be uncovered throughout this tale.
Yeah, no, what is really interesting though, and I think it's worth mentioning, many religions especially focus very heavily on the idea that there is some sort of collective consciousness, and even scientists have debated whether there is a collective consciousness or not. And in Lovecraft mythos, there definitely is, right? Because as we know, Lovecraft, even though it's telling stories of people that seem like they're real people, it's obviously not. I really need to download this image instead of looking it up every time I talk about Lovecraft. But I really feel like talking about the world building of Lovecraft is so important to actually understand what he's talking about. But anyway, the idea of Lovecraftian mythos is that currently we're all living in our own universe, right? A material plane. But above the material plane, there is a dream world. It's a subconscious that all of our subconscious minds mix there. And for some reason, for some odd reason, our consciousness themselves holds us back from recognizing the horrors of what our collective consciousness is seeing. It's a really interesting concept, honestly, and I think by knowledge itself being dangerous, it definitely does pave the way to an interesting story and an interesting and horrifying world.
Francis tells us that the reason he's writing is because his great-uncle has passed away. His great-uncle was Professor George Ongle, a language professor at Brown University. His great-uncle, 92 years of age, died when he was attacked by a man and then collapsed to the ground.
Rip.
However, it didn't seem that the man who attacked him had actually attacked him in any physical way, because there were no clear signs of his cause of death.
Knowledge attack! Oh yeah, he attacked him by giving him knowledge. Too dangerous, it corrupted his mind.
However, due to his age, the doctors figured it was probably a heart-related ailment, so no one thought anything suspicious. Since Ongle had no children or...
I didn't push him off the balcony. It was his intrusive thoughts that did it.
...spouse to speak of, Francis is the executor of his estate. While going through his great-uncle's belongings, Francis comes across a locked box that it takes him some time to find the key for. What he finds in that box would lead to all of the horrors you're going to hear from here on out.
All right, dude. That's such a... So far, it's built up as like the most classic horror story, right? Dude, great uncle, old guy, dies in mysterious circumstances. He gets a key in a box, a locked box. And woo, gaboo, 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 gaboo. There's going to be some nefariousness afoot. Basic, classic bitch horror shit. For me, it's the world building of Lovecraft that makes Lovecraft so scary. The idea of the horror.
Spoiler territory, we're about to get into the meat of the story, so I emphasize now what is more important.
God, I love meat! I like taking some meat and putting it in my mouth. You know what I'm saying? Oh God, I love good meat.
And listening to my video or to hearing what someone else has to say about literature is consuming literature for yourself. Not literally, don't eat the book. Unless it's really good, I guess. I will make the caveat, however, that while this book doesn't really contain any, like, super hyper violence or anything like some of the stories I cover, it does contain a lot of racism. So if—
Yeah! Lovecraft! Woo! I do actually have a little segment in my in the video I'm working on for Lovecraft where I talk about the racism shit. Because one of the points that I want to make in the video, this is a controversial take, I suppose. One of the points I want to make in the video is you'll have people like Lovecraft, and he's referenced everywhere, from fucking Overlord to Digimon to Rick and Morty. He is everywhere. He is ubiquitous in modern culture. But he was a massive racist, and no one cares. J.K. Rowling, who's not nearly as controversial in any way as Lovecraft, okay? Not even close. If you even quote Harry Potter, they try to cancel you for it. It's a wild double standard that I see kind of everywhere.
If you're not comfortable with that, maybe don't read it. And you may hear that and be like, oh, what? Does it say, like, a couple slurs? No.
What's it gonna do? What's it gonna do? Is it gonna say the N-word? Bro, I've seen Turkey Tom on YouTube. Oh, come on, bro. I've seen PewDiePie on the bridge.
Actually, racism is integral to the plot.
No way. Is it actually? This is why we're doing the lore dive, baby. That's why we're doing the lore dive. This is racism lore, everybody. This is we needed it today, I guess. It's not a Nux stream without racism. That sounded really wrong.
We'll talk about it more as we get to it, but just know that if you're wanting to read this story for yourself, viewer discretion. Francis.
Yeah, shout out to Lovecraft, who he had a really good line when he got married. He got married to a Jewish woman, but she was only a half Jew, so it wasn't so bad. This guy, he was wild. Do you know what he named his cat? Should I? So this was the name of Lovecraft's cat, ladies and gentlemen. The name of his cat was this. Listen, it's an interesting idea for him to name his cat like that. But listen, everyone has. Yeah, I'm not defending it. Fuck, man.
This opens the locked box and inside finds several papers and a statue.
Right. Above these apparent hieroglyphics was a figure of evident pictorial intent, though its impressionistic execution forbade a very clear idea of its nature. It seemed to be a sort of monster, or symbol representing a monster, of a form which only a diseased fancy could conceive.
A diseased fancy. Anyone that watches tentacle hentai.
If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body.
A pulpy, girthy, veiny, tentacly head.
With rudimentary wings. But it was the general outline of the whole which made it most shockingly frightful. Behind the figure was a vague suggestions of a cyclopean architectural background.
What's so cool is that there's no actual picture of Cthulhu. Now, one of the things that I think is really important to understand when it comes to Lovecraftian mythos and basic psychology, when something is so horrifying and something that the brain itself cannot comprehend, the brain will, it'll fill in the blanks for you. It'll actually craft something that is comprehensible for your mind. As a defense mechanism, your brain will change what you're looking at to be something else. A classic example is the what color is the dress? I gave you this example just the other day when we were talking about anti-memes. So this dress right here that you're looking at, this one, you either see it as blue and black or as white and gold. Now, everyone's brain is different, and therefore everyone's brain will regard it in a different way. When I see this dress, I see white and gold. I am wrong. My brain is tricking me. This dress is blue and black. This is the dress. It's just because of the way it's presented with the shadow over the dress, your mind is trying to overcorrect itself and say, oh, it's actually gold and white and it's the shadow that makes it look a different way, so your brain translates the image for you. This and this are the same. Now, some of you in chat that always saw this in blue and black, you're gonna say, no shit, these are the same. But to the people that see this as white and gold and see this one as blue and black, that is scary as hell. Like, it is wild to recognize that this is all your brain tricking you into seeing different colors. So whenever your brain doesn't fully comprehend something, it fills in the blanks for you. And because it fills in the blanks for you, the picture that you have in your mind is not necessarily the reality of what you're looking at. So when they describe this, it's something that an extravagant imagination will yield the pictures of the octopus, dragon, and human caricature. Because who knows what it actually looks like? The human mind cannot comprehend a being of such unfathomable horror. So therefore, it translates it as a human dragon octopus.
If the statue wasn't odd enough, along with it are several different documents collected by the late professor. The heading above these simply saying the words, Cthulhu.
Nux, I don't know, but I see your VTuber model is wearing blackface right now. Is that my brain? Shut, chat. Chat! We are not using this as an excuse. This is not happening. This will not become a meme.
Cult. While there were several supplemental texts within this large document, things like newspaper clippings or pieces of Theosophist literature, the bulk of the manuscript was made up of two separate accounts.
All right.
The first of these accounts was of the professor's interactions with a young man named Henry Wilcox.
The professor's interactions with a young man. I don't know. Sounds like some Dr. Disrespect shit.
Young Henry Wilcox, an art student near Brown
His name is even Cox, for God's sake.
University, came to the professor for help. Wilcox had the statue, the same one that Francis would later find in a locked box, and was asking the professor to help him identify what it could mean. The professor, an expert in ancient cultures, takes one look at the statue and realizes it was made yesterday. So he shrugs it off as some kind of joke. But it's what—
Bro, it's like, you look at the ancient statue. Ah, yes, you made this in your basement. Shut the fuck up.
What Wilcox says when the professor remarks on the recency of the statue that catches the professor's attention.
It is new indeed, for I made it last night in a dream of strange cities.
Oh, shit.
And dreams are older than brooding Tyr, or the contemplative Sphinx, or garden-girdled Babylon.
Fuck, that's a sick line. Especially when you look at, so Call of Cthulhu was one of Lovecraft's earliest works in his greater Lovecraftian mythos. In the actual mythos, after it's a little more established, we understand what this means. Because right above our conscious universe, there is the dream world universe. And in that dream world universe, it's above time. Time does not even exist there. And it is this collective unconscious that everyone is part of when they're dreaming or whatever. Or if they meditate and become a dreamer, as you see in other Lovecraft books. So it is new because he made it last night, but he made it in a dream, meaning in this dreamland. So it has to be super ancient because time doesn't even exist in the dreamland, in the dream world.
So the professor starts to listen. In the early hours of March the 1st, late in the night, an earthquake ripped through New England. Wilcox says that after the earthquake, he began to have these vicious dreams. The dreams always depicted him in these ancient cities, or something that can be described as similar to cities. These great gigantic pillars of rock that extended beyond his imagination. Along the rock were these runes he couldn't identify, but this language was scrawled on every inch of the place. The moss that hung from the stones implied that this was a city long forgotten and far from human. Wilcox says that through these dreams, his brain was filled with voices and messages he couldn't understand. And from them, the only thing he could make out, the only thing he could take into the waking world with him, was the phrase, Cthulhu Fatagan. It's
Fatagan? Bro, that is a terrible pronunciation.
Into the waking world with him was the phrase, Cthulhu Fatagan.
It's obviously Ftagan! Okay, maybe not. But anyway, so he took this phrase with him into the waking world. He kept seeing this shit in his dreams. An ancient city. It's honestly, what I love about Lovecraft stories is, at this point, it just sounds like some random adventure novel, you know? Ftagging these nuts! Anyway, but like the point is, you, at this point in the universe, in this world, in the story, it sounds like a classic adventure novel. Like, it doesn't even begin to describe the horror of the cosmic entities and the way the world actually works in Cthulhu mythos. Like, it just seems like guys going on a cool quest.
It's from this that Professor Ongle becomes terrified.
But what's even more horrifying about this story is most horror stories involve some sort of, at least at this point in history, horror generally was some sort of threat. A threat of violence to you, to your family, to your friends. Like, that's horror, right? It makes you insane even. But that, again, that's a threat of physical damage. What's so scary about Lovecraftian mythos is that it's so beyond your comprehension. You are nothing. You are pointless. The world is just completely under the control of these cosmic entities that they do their own shit and you don't matter at all.
He begins to ask Wilcox about ancient cults and lost stories and histories humanity isn't privy to. Wilcox doesn't understand what the professor's talking about. He simply came to him to help identify this thing he saw in his dream and later carved out of stone. The professor is so desperate, he swears to Wilcox that he will keep his secret. If this is some kind of joke, if it's a prank, he will never mention it to anyone if Wilcox just tells the truth. But Wilcox doesn't know what the professor's talking about. We'll later find out that this name, Cthulhu, means something to the professor.
Oh!
But young Wilcox isn't privy to it. Once the professor is...
Alright, interesting. Now, the thing is, Cthulhu is actually something that's in the subconscious of every human. Now, people won't recognize it, but that's what makes it such a horrifying fact. Because in this dreamland, in this world of a collective unconscious, everyone's subconscious is privy to the shit of everyone else's subconscious. But anyway... Wilcox or won't Cox
is convinced that Wilcox is speaking in earnest. Every day he begins to document whatever dreams Wilcox has had, and every day they remain the same. These legends, visions almost, of forgotten cities. So from March the 1st to March the 23rd, the professor takes note of the things Wilcox sees in his dreams. The only words being repeated again are Cthulhu and Rilya. The reason the account...
So, Rilya... Or, I always pronounce it Ryla, but he's probably right.
The only words being repeated again are Cthulhu and Rilya.
So I always pronounce that as Ryla, but he's totally right. It's Rilya. Again, that's like the ancient city or whatever. But this word, Rilya, is in Digimon, referring to an ancient chant to summon a demon. That is the ubiquitousness of Lovecraft.
The reason the accounts stop on March the 23rd is because suddenly Wilcox seems to lose his mind. He comes down with a horrific fever and begins speaking nonsense in something the professor can't even understand. He's moved back to his family home and doctors check in on him to see that it seems he's come down with some mysterious illness that appears to be killing him. However,
and the irony is, this illness, it's coming from his mind! His mind is somehow intruded into a place that it shouldn't have gone. And that mind infected his body. He's having physical diseases because of his mind getting polluted by information he shouldn't have gotten. How scary is that? Wilcox Rilya. Oh my god.
After only a little over a week of this delirious state, Wilcox just snaps out of it. On April the 2nd, he wakes up feeling much better, and that seems to be the end of it. As a matter of fact, from
That's fucking scary too. The illness is taking over, no one knows what it is, all of a sudden he's fine.
there, Wilcox doesn't even have any more dreams, so he's of no use to the professor. So the professor begins to take up stories and notes.
Bro, he just burnt out like a light bulb. He keeps getting more and more dreams in more and more intense ways. His body eventually gets sick from the cognito hazard. And then all of a sudden he gets better. He has no dreams. It's out of his mind completely. It's like it washed him out.
Of other dreamers within the region. And it turns out that at the same time Wilcox began experiencing his dreams, several other people around the New England area also began experiencing really weird dreams.
Dude, that's such a fucking scary concept. Bro, it's such a crazy concept. More people are getting these dreams. Because again, it's the collective subconscious. The collective unconscious of people are all pulling them to myth. Oh my god, that is the worst free... We'll add it to the collage, ladies and gentlemen. Yes! Yes! This is why I love my job. This is why I love my job. I get to take screenshots of people on bad pause frames. Yes, yes!
All depicting these ancient ruins and lost cities. The worst of this came from March the 23rd to April 2nd, the same period of time that Wilcox came down with the fever. During this
Can I just say I love the new Wendigoon editing style where he puts the actual words of the book behind him?
time, dozens of people had these vivid waking nightmares of some horrible place once forgotten.
Ironically, they're having these nightmares of something that they never saw, something they can't possibly remember, but of something that's very real to them. They're having overlapping nightmares. Again, the horror that information alone can corrupt someone's mind.
And several describing something awful, miles high as they described it, walking among the ruins. One man even died after screaming for several days that something from hell is coming to take him. Furthermore, among the documents that Francis finds, the professor had collected stories of people taking their own life in that period of time.
Damn.
Waking up out of a dream and hurling themselves out of an apartment window. He connected this to stories,
Your Honor, in my defense, it was Cthulhu.
after March the 23rd, that didn't explicitly have to do with dreams. There were several facilities for the mentally unwell where people for a week on end were screaming and shouting and had to be constantly sedated. In India, there were
Wow, holy shit. Actually corrupting everyone's minds. It's like, everyone knows, I think when people think of Cthulhu and the horror of Cthulhu, the generic one, the generic idea that so many people talk about is Cthulhu will seep into the unconscious mind of the people. Slowly but surely it will corrupt them. It will turn their minds into its fleshlights, where everyone will just want to worship the great Lord Cthulhu. Slowly but surely corrupting and brainwashing the masses. But it's so much scarier than that. It's the idea of just slowly seeping into the subconscious, where people don't actually understand that shit, you know? That's so much scarier. It's not that they're just getting mind controlled. It's just that there is this information out there that's seeping into people's minds, driving them crazy, making them kill themselves, getting them into mental institutions. But anyway, something more important to recognize. Did you know that Batman spends his time fighting mentally handicapped people?
were reports of an uprising full of destruction. It seems that something that no one is connecting the dots on happened in the days after March the 23rd, and perhaps the professor is the only one who can put it together. The professor then describes in his manuscript that, once again Francis is reading, why the name Cthulhu was so impactful to him,
Alright.
and why, upon
Lore!
inspection of the statue, he had seen that image once before. The second large piece of the professor's manuscript is the story of an inspector named John LeGras. In 1908, the professor was at the American Archaeological Society meeting in St. Louis, which you can effectively imagine to be a nerd convention. For
Archaeology societal meeting? Yeah, that's a nerd convention. I love how everyone is like, oh, you go to Comic-Con to talk about comics? You go to anime convention to talk about anime convention? That's so cringe. You should be based like me, where I go talk to people about old rocks. Yeah!
old nerds. As the professor was in attendance with several of his colleagues, someone new showed up. This man was a police inspector from New Orleans, the aforementioned John LeGras. Or I think it's LeGras. It's spelled like LeGras.
LeGras! No, that's LeGras, brother. You see, in French, the only times that consonants at the ends of words are silent is if there isn't a vowel after them. Every time there's a vowel after the consonant, you pronounce the consonant. I fucking hate French.
It might be LeGras.
You know what I do every once in a while? I touch LeGras, people. I go outside and I touch LeGras. That's me, John Elden Ring, touching LeGras.
But French names scare me.
French names should scare you. It's the worst language of all time. Just simply put, French sucks. Do you know how to say mouse in French? So, this is how you say mouse in French, like this. You know how to pronounce this? Souris. Wait a second, there's an S at the end. Why do you not pronounce the S at the end? That's so weird. Because for some reason, they do random bullshit. And there's no way to actually pronounce any words in French. You never pronounce half the words. Okay, dude, look at this. You ready? You're gonna lose your mind. Much. Try to spell this word. Try to pronounce this, okay? Try to pronounce much in French. You ain't ready. Beaucoup. How on earth do you have a word with 8 letters pronounced beaucoup? Of course, the P is silent because Well, consonant at the end of the word is silent. Obviously, that's just how it always happens. Guys, this is Lovecraftian horror. Anyway, Boku no Pico. Fuck you.
There's like 18 letters, and you pronounce 2 that aren't in there. It's strange.
Yeah, Boku. All right, you want to know the actual worst the actual worst word in all of French? You know how to say 96 in French, guys? Yeah, you probably don't even know what you're looking at right now. You're like, what the fuck? How is this 96? 96 is 96. Quatre means 4. 20 is 20. Of course, it's pronounced 20, and there's a silent fucking GT at the end of the word because holy shit, it's stupid language. Says 420 16 because 420s is 80 and says is 16, so 16 and 80 is 96. That is how you say 96 in French. 96. 420 16. I am not even joking with you. Bro, 20 is 20 with the silent GT at the end. 80 is 80 because that's 420s. And then 90 is 90. 420 10. You can't even make this up, bro. 90 in French is 420 10. 90. Now I know you're thinking, why does the X sound make an S sound at the end of the word? Well, because if there would be an S at the end of the word, it would be silent. Why? Why? Do you know how to say eyes in French? You have the same disease. Eyes in French.
No, I don't, so I'm cutting this joke early. You really wasted my time editing just to shit on the French? Cool. Va te faire mettre.
Stupid fucking language. Anyway, I rest my case. Lovecraft got nothing on French.
The inspector had arrived at this archaeological meeting in 1908 looking for answers. While raiding a cult in the swamps south of New Orleans, the inspector and his men found something that they could not identify.
The figure, which was finally passed slowly from man to man for close and careful study, was between 7 and 8 inches in height and of exquisitely artistic workmanship. It represented a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus-like head whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on hind and forefeet, and long, narrow wings behind. This thing, which seemed instinct with a fearsome and unnatural malignancy, was of a somewhat bloated corpulence, and squatted evilly on a rectangular block or
Squatted evilly? A rotund corpulence? Is that Boogie 2988? Bloated corpulence is my new favorite description of Boogie 2988. Squatted evilly?
pedestal covered with undecipherable characters. The tips of the wings touched the back edge of the block. The seat occupied the center, whilst the long, curved claws of the doubled-up, crouching hind legs gripped the front edge and extended a quarter of the way down toward the bottom of the pedestal. The cephalopod head was bent forward so that the ends of the facial feelers brushed the backs of huge forepaws which clasped the croucher's elevated knees.
That's a really good description, honestly. Like, that is an incredibly good description of the fucking sexy art of Cthulhu.
The aspect of the whole was abnormally lifelike, and the more subtly fearful because its source was so totally unknown. Its vast, awesome, and incalculable age was unmistakable. Yet, not one link did it show with any known type of art belonging to civilization's youth, or indeed to any other time.
Damn.
Totally separate and apart, its very material was a mystery. For the soapy, greenish-black stone with its golden or iridescent flecks and striations resembled nothing familiar to geology or mineralogy.
That's actually kind of wild, right? Like the idea that it's also not mineralogy, it's just mineralogy. But anyway, it's really interesting that, it's art unlike anything we've seen. It's a material that is unidentifiable. It is a creature that seems so lifelike yet is so unhuman. Like, it is definitely building up the penultimate moment of the series that we're gonna meet this monster, right? At some point.
Resembled nothing familiar to geology or mineralogy. The characters along the base were equally baffling, and no member present,
despite a representation of half the world's
It is of colors unlike anything we've ever seen before. It is of like art unlike of which we've ever seen before. A material unlike of anything we've ever seen before. Colors like we've never seen.
expert learning in this
I love the way Cthulhu just builds up the mystery. It's like, it was a creature we've never heard of, dreams of things we've never seen, languages we've never heard, art that's never existed, a material that we've never experienced in this corporeal plane. It's like, yeah, we get it. This is all right. Smells unlike the which we've ever smelt. I've been to Asmongold's apartment and haven't smelled anything like this.
field could form the least notion of even their remotest linguistic kinship. They, like the subject and material, belong to something horribly remote and distinct from mankind as we know it. Something frightfully suggestive of old and unhallowed cycles of life in which our world and our conceptions have no part. Only one person at the convention has seen anything like it. This man, another...
Dude, I really like the way Wendigoon made this video. Like the way he, like he'll do his talking shtick and he'll read different excerpts of the book, obviously in a different setup, right? He's recording with a different mic, but he'll read the different excerpts of the setup and put it in different varying spots in the video. He probably recorded all that in post. Really good shit.
Archaeological professor says that he encountered a group of natives off the coast of Greenland.
Natives? Ew! I mean, that's probably what Lovecraft was saying.
Who had idols of a similar visage, and that the people who praised these idols were known for their barbarity. You know, cannibalism, human sacrifice.
Guys, it is at maximum volume. You can keep asking me to make it louder, but it is literally at maximum volume. I cannot help you. I cannot do anything, okay? Dude, Wendigooner needs to turn up his mic.
The whole works. After the inspector and this professor who studied the group off of Greenland conversed for some time, they managed to piece together from all of the phrases and things they picked up from the chants they heard, a single phrase repeated by both cults.
The Cthulhu Relaya.
And that phrase is...
Oh, it's obviously Pinuglui Milgwinab Cthulhu Relaya Ugad Nagal Ftagan. No shit.
This series of words.
Yeah, that's what it said. Say it.
I'm not even gonna try. And
why would you not try to say Finglui, Midglaf, Cthulhu, Relaya, Nurglath, Nagel, Flatagan? Why would you not? Bro, this is just your average town in Wales. Here, Welsh word. Bro, this is the name of a town, of a Welsh town, okay? It's Langenfilgwide Plingwingling Glorgling Long Chingwanglian Lorgenglan. Yes, it is just a place in North Wales, okay? This makes Cthulhu Relaya so different. Nux didn't need to call my people out like that, dog. Well, listen, I do what I can. I insult everyone equally. That's the goal here.
And I know people make fun of me all the time. They're like, oh, what does Wendigoon say every time he sees a phrase in a language that isn't American English? Oh, I'm not even going to try. I get that. This isn't any language. This is fake. Lovecraft made this up, okay? This one doesn't count.
No, it counts, bro. Dude, anyone that puts apostrophes in their fucking words is a fucking pretentious piece of shit. You will not convince me otherwise. If you make up a fake made-up language and you're putting apostrophes in words just to make it look more elven and shit, get the fuck out of here, okay? Get out of here. No one needs apostrophes in their words, okay? God. Here, let me see. Lord of the Rings. There's some bullshit elf names. All right, at least a lot of them don't seem to have the apostrophes. It's just Celebrimbor, Aragorn, Glorfindel, Fëanor. Yeah, Finglolfin. All right. Well, anyway, elf names, apostrophes. Let's see if we can find apostrophes. There we go. Tell me why they do this. It's stupid. It's dumb. Can we please admit that? Oh my God, I've seen a total head scratcher names like, what the fuck? That's a name in a book? No. Oh my Lord. Sidkimweov, that does not need to be a thing. That's stupid. That's really dumb. I fucking hate it. Can we please let this this die? Can we please let this die?
This isn't any language. This is fake
Lovecraft made this up, okay? This one doesn't count. The inspector said after conversing with one of the cult members who was captured after the raid in New Orleans, the cult member confirmed to him what this phrase means.
All right.
The quote is, "In his house at Relia, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming." Then the inspector...
At his house in Relia, right? Relia is the ancient temple. I mean, we're going to reveal this. But in the ancient temple...
In his house at Relia...
Right? In his house, this ancient temple in Relia...
Dead Cthulhu waits dreaming.
It waits dreaming, right? The irony of the word is that if you're dead, you don't dream. Right? That's the irony. It's that it's dead because it's not alive in the current plane of existence. It's currently living in the void, waiting for blood sacrifices or whatever to get back in here. But goddamn.
Then the inspector gives an account of what happened at the raid this statue was discovered in. Or I guess more specifically, Francis relays to us what his professor uncle wrote about what the inspector said happened at the raid in New Orleans. In 1907, the New Orleans police were informed that several people in the swamps south of the city had been going missing. The majority of the people who were going missing were from the impoverished regions outside of any large community, and it seems that through the nights, they had been picked off one by one. The reports also said that within the tree line, at night, you could hear chanting and drums, and that none of the locals would dare go searching. So on November 1st of 1907, 20 police officers from New Orleans took a trip into the swamp to try to find out what was happening to all these missing people. Sure enough, when the police get there late in the evening, they begin to hear the same drums and the same yells that were reported before.
You wonder if these drums and yells are in the minds of these people, or if the drums and yells are something in reality. That's another thing that Lovecraft does so well. You always wonder if these things that are in your mind or if they're real. And then the follow-up question is, if they're in your mind, does that make them any less real? It's such an interesting take on horror in general. You see why it's spread out into modern horror so much. Like, actually so fucking cool.
However, as they got closer, they began to hear screaming and yelling. They couldn't tell if it was from a man, an animal, or something in between. The locals who were previously showing the police the way suddenly quit, saying that there are legends of these bat-like demons that fly out of the caves at night and dance to the devil in the woods, and that they certainly weren't going to step out there. As the police make their way through the tree line, they see what appears to be a fire somewhere out in the distance. And upon coming to a clearing, they see this.
In the natural glade of the swamp stood a grassy island of perhaps an acre's extent, clear of trees and tolerably dry. On this now leaped and twisted a more indescribable horde of human abnormality than any but a Sime or an Angarola could paint.
What's so interesting is a lot of people talk about this in horror, that true horror is taking humans and warping them. It's like, it's almost human. You know, it was human. Like, these are like classic horror tropes. And, yep, they're here. Big shock.
Void of clothing, this hybrid spawn were braying, bellowing, and writhing about a monstrous, ring-shaped bonfire, in the center of which, revealed by occasional rifts in the curtain of flame, stood a great granite monolith, some 8 feet in height.
Okay.
On top of which, incongruous in its diminutiveness.
It's not pronounced incongruous? Maybe I'm just an idiot. Incongruous. That's how I always pronounced it.
Incongruous.
Base Nuxanor, once again, we take those.
Rested the noxious carven statuette. From a wide circle of tin scaffolds set up at regular intervals with the flame-girt monolith as a center hung, head downward, the oddly marred bodies of the helpless squatters who had disappeared.
Well, they didn't disappear. They're just mikers. That's scary as shit. Wait, like, for example, you know the forge golems? Is that what they're called? Forge golems in Elden Ring? The furnace golems, that's what they're called. But, like, it definitely plays into that again, right? That idea. God, it's crazy to see the Lovecraft references, like, literally everywhere. I need a higher resolution image. Here, let me see if I can do this. Because this is something so scary. This is so scary to see Lovecraft, or at least this idea, get referenced everywhere. Because it's a really scary concept, right? Like, if you just take one of these furnace golems, but you zoom in a lot. Okay, this isn't working. You see it's built by the charred remains of humanoids, right? Like, that is what is building it up. That's what it's made of. Like, it's such a scary little tiny gimmick. Like, you see the tiny fucking people. And obviously, just like everything else, it is in fact a Berserk reference. It is in fact a Berserk reference. This right here is the Wicker Man, ladies and gentlemen, and it is a big fucking furnace-y shit guy that has, like, you see the little faces in there, they're all little people that are screaming and shit. Yeah, but anyway, it's definitely something very prevalent in culture, and it's a really cool idea. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say.
It was inside this circle that the ring of worshippers jumped and roared.
Whoa!
General direction of the mass motion being from left to right, an endless bacchanal between the rings of bodies and the ring of fire.
Yeah, because also, interestingly enough, right, we know Cthulhu is somehow invading people's minds, and some of them are going crazy, but some of them are actually joining this Cthulhu cult. Some of them are actually worshiping Cthulhu at some point. Like, it makes the level of this cosmic horror so much scarier.
To fancy, he heard antiphonal responses to the ritual from some far and unillumined spot deeper within the wood of ancient legendary and horror. This man, Joseph D. Galvez, I later met and questioned, and he—
Oh my god! Joseph D. Galvez? Bro, is that a One Piece reference?
proved distractingly imaginative. He indeed went so far as to hint of the faint beating of great wings, and of a glimpse of shining eyes and a mountainous white bulk beyond the remotest trees, but I suppose he had been hearing too much native superstition.
Yeah. Or is the superstition just correct? Minor editing mistake. It's just, Wendigoon, are you coming back? Wendigoon! Minor editing mistake! Editor!
So seeing this whole,
Alright, thank God, he's
whole
back.
parade of primordial gods and dead bodies, the police start shooting at it. The practitioners—
Classic police every time, bro. You see a primordial shit and you just shoot it? Oh my god, dude. Dude, the police, this police force over here, they stink more than dog shit. Classic police. Just seeing it move and shooting it. And they're charred. You know what that means, bro? They're charred. I'm just saying, they found a charred corpse and they started shooting it. I'm just saying that they're not beating the racist allegations, that's for sure. That's one thing. They ain't beating the racist allegations. They just see a black thing moving and they're like, oh fuck.
then fight back, which surprisingly, only 5 of them are killed. An additional 47 are taken as prisoner. The police begin to question the prisoners they have, and from it, they get—
The surprise is they didn't kill everyone. By surprise, they didn't kill everything that moved. Only most of them. Oh, police.
some details of what this religion entails. They worshipped, so they said, the great old ones.
Oh! I didn't realize the great old ones were mentioned in the Call of Cthulhu. I thought they were only mentioned in later novels. Oh my god.
Who lived ages before there were any men, and who came to the young world out of the sky. Those old ones
This is see, again, I like that it does this because they did not come out of the sky, right? They came out of the void. They came from a completely different plane of existence. They didn't just float down from the sky. But because people's minds aren't able to comprehend what the void is, what a different plane of existence is, their perception changes it to the sky. Remember, this isn't an objective truth. This is an unreliable narrator. This is someone whose narration is warped by his own mind.
were gone now, inside the earth and under the sea, but their dead bodies had told their secrets in dreams to the first men, who
The
formed
First Men, is that a Game of Thrones reference?
a cult which had never died. This was that cult, and the prisoners said it had always existed and always would exist, hidden in distant wastes and dark places all over the world until the time when the great priest Cthulhu from his dark house in the mighty city of Aurelia under the waters should rise and bring the earth again beneath his sway.
Yeah, and they're looking forward to it. That's the scary part about brainwashing. It's like the world is gonna be taken over by a giant fucking tentacle monster. Isn't it great? And they're like, no, that's not great. It's so good. It's so good. Oh, I love tentacles. Oh.
Someday he would call, when the stars were ready and the
stars were ready. Cosmic horror that somehow, ironically, this giant creature that's sleeping under the ocean, it matters what's going on in the fucking stratosphere, you know? It matters what the cosmos is doing.
secret cult would always be waiting to liberate him.
Well,
Meanwhile, no more must be told. There was a secret which even torture could not extract. Mankind was not absolutely alone among the conscious things of earth, for shapes came out of the dark to visit the faithful few. But these were not the great old ones. No man had ever seen the old ones.
Yeah, what's ironic is Cthulhu is a priest. It's the priest that's trying its best to bring the great old ones into reality. But the great old ones never showed up. Because if they ever showed up, it would be the end. Everyone always talks about how Cthulhu was like this super powerful being. Cthulhu is an incredibly weak Lovecraftian entity compared to Azathoth and Yog-Sothoth and all the other really scary ones.
Carven idol was great Cthulhu, but none might say whether or not the others were precisely like him.
Ha! No. Again, I've already done the Lovecraft mythos deep dive.
No one could read the old writing now, but things were told by word of mouth. The chanted ritual was not the secret. That was never spoken aloud, only whispered. The chant meant only this. In his house at Aurelia, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming.
Waits dreaming. Because, you see, in the dream world, that's the collective unconscious. That's where every single human being, when they're dreaming, their unconscious goes to the dreamland in Lovecraftian mythos. So, since Cthulhu, it's dead, right? It has no life in it, but it's dreaming. It is invading the collective unconscious of humanities, slowly but surely corrupting them and making a whole cult that worship it at this point. Some went crazy, the ones that couldn't understand or weren't on the cognitive level to worship it properly. Those guys went crazy. Some of them killed themselves. Some of them got sick. Like, it's so crazy to look at the idea of this mental corruption. Like, cognitohazard is such a scary idea.
These ancient dead things, or at least dead in the closest way we could describe them, seem to...
Yeah, how do you... I feel like by dead, they just mean something that isn't alive the way we perceive life in the physical world. And since, by that definition of life, it is not alive, I guess we have to call it dead. Not that it doesn't still exist or affect people.
be controlling not only this group south of New Orleans, but groups across the world. I mean, we heard at the archaeological convention that similar things were found in Greenland. And if the cult members are to be believed...
Oh! Greenland! It's not even green! Oh my god.
This belief stretches further in both time and space than any one man could comprehend. The inspector inquired more and found more information from a mestizo named Castro. Castro would tell him more about this religion of a dead god.
Why do they call him Castro? Is he castrated or some shit?
These great old ones, Castro continued,
Alright.
were not composed altogether of flesh and blood.
No.
They had shape, for did not this star-fashioned image prove it? But that shape was not made of matter.
It's such a cool idea. The shape that we are giving it, dude, okay, this is such a cool idea. Oh god, I love it so much. Fuck. I didn't realize Call of Cthulhu was actually this based. I thought that, like, the Lovecraftian mythos was good. I didn't realize the actual story was so fascinating, the way they're slowly unraveling the mystery. Unraveling the mystery, that is a mystery, big bang. Alright, anyway, like this is how our pathetic little human filthy minds perceive it, right? We keep getting different images of it wherever you look. They're slightly different. They're nuanced. They're similar, but there's so many different pictures. Like, the beauty of this is that this is how our mind will perceive it. It is a Lovecraftian eldritch horror. It is something that it's not made of matter. It's not made of flesh. It's not physical by any way we can understand physicality. So this image, this is how a human mind would perceive this creature after implementing its defense mechanism. Because what it actually is something that's not even comprehensible. It's like a what color is the dress situation.
When the stars were right, They could plunge from world to world through the sky, but when the stars were wrong, they could not live. But although they no longer lived, they would never really die. They all lay in stone houses in their great city of Rillia, preserved by the spells of mighty Cthulhu for a glorious resurrection when the stars and the earth might once more be ready for them. But at that time, some force from outside must serve to liberate their bodies. The spells that
because ultimately, Cthulhu's whole job is just being the priest to summon these fuckers back into reality.
preserved them intact likewise prevented them from making an initial move, and they could only lie awake in the dark and think whilst uncounted millions of years rolled by. They knew all that was occurring in the universe, for their mode of speech was transmitted thought. Even now, they talked.
Transmitted thought is their mode of speech. Speech is too physical for them. It's such an... It really does paint the picture that these are some ancient beings that you cannot comprehend.
In their tombs. When, after infinities of chaos, the first men came, the great old ones spoke to the sensitive among them by molding their dreams, for only thus could their language reach the fleshy minds of mammals. He goes on to say,
through dreams and subconscious. It's scary as fuck.
That in this sort of end times, after Cthulhu has risen, he will bring about an era where men know pleasure like they've never known pleasure before, and know violence and anger and wrath and all of their natural feelings in ways currently impossible. It's as if Cthulhu will unlock channels to the mind that we didn't know existed. And it makes sense, as Cthulhu's been here much longer than even the mind itself has existed. Castro goes on to say that this lost city of Rillia is lying beneath the sea. The stars, ancient heavenly bodies in space, must be just right for Cthulhu and his followers to live. But that now, at this moment in time, the stars are wrong, so we're at peace. But even though Cthulhu...
Yeah, but the spooky thing is, like, you have, again, it's the concept of having no control. Like, you have zero control on whether the stars are going to be right or wrong, whether humanity is just going to get wiped out as a tiny little blip in the history of these great ancient beings that don't give a flying shit about you.
Cthulhu is dead for now, he can still think through the dreams of men. And that one day the stars will be right again, and when that happens, Cthulhu will rise, and all of the memories that humanity has forgotten will be made new. Castro goes on to say that this religion is so ancient and so hidden, there's not even written text about it. You can't even find some hidden book that is their sort of Bible. It is simply a thing wholly reserved to shadow. Castro mentioning that the only written record that has anything to do with the Cthulhu cult, a cult that is supposedly older than time, is double meanings within the Necronomicon. One of which being the quote,
yes, dude! I needed that Necronomicon lore. That was on my list. I didn't realize it would intersect with this.
"That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons, even death may die." So Francis is reading all of this, the stories of Legrasse and the professor and whatnot, and comes to the conclusion that Wilcox had to be making it up. And that makes sense, right? There was a cult in southern Louisiana that this whole story of human sacrifices and whatnot made its way to his great uncle, the professor, and then by coincidence, someone who knew his great uncle shows up with a statue and stories of the same thing.
Basically, this shit going too far. Ain't no way this real. Come on, bro. This is scary and probably fake, and I'm not gonna, you know, humor it. Yeah, well, anyway. You should watch the South Park episode on Cthulhu? Yeah, maybe I will.
So Francis goes to Wilcox to effectively chew him out because he thinks that Wilcox preyed upon the fears of an old man. But when Francis gets to Wilcox's house, if you'll remember, Wilcox is an artist, hence why he was able to carve the statue of Cthulhu in the first place. When Francis gets there, Wilcox's house is full of paintings and sketches and drawings and dioramas and everything you could imagine of these dreams of his.
Again, you have to realize that this dream, whatever it is, whether it's real or not, it fucking corrupted him. Like, this isn't a prank. This isn't just something he had on the mind. This is something that is, at least to him, so real. Bruh, that is really, really scary. It goes to show you the level of impact it actually had on this man.
Of these lost cities, and of Cthulhu
and the coming end. Francis doesn't tell Wilcox what he's found. If Wilcox is truly wrapped up in this in ways that he can't attest to, if his mind is possessed by Cthulhu, then perhaps better to not tell him the full extent of his troubles.
Yeah, right. Leave him in mystery. The more he knows, the worse it'll get, because the more he knows, the more he's thinking about it in his conscious mind, the easier he will be able to be corrupted in his dreams. God, dude, it's such a scary idea, right? Like this idea of a cognito hazard. It doesn't stop getting scary. See, the thing that I'm happy about this current video that Wendigooner is making is I never really looked at the Lovecraft mythos and lore from the perspective of what did the humans actually do in these worlds. Like, I did a brief summary of shit, but God, it's like seeing humans trying to navigate this landscape, this nihilistic reality of everything just being in the palm of some fucking ancient eldritch deity it's harrowing. Some people believe it, some people don't, but it doesn't matter whether you do or not. You're still but a nothing in the grand scheme of things.
To tell him how doomed he really is. But Francis is thinking on these things, and he thinks on his great uncle, and considers that perhaps his death wasn't just some random attack.
Woo!
Perhaps a member of the cult found that the professor was learning too much.
Or perhaps it infected his mind. Because there were no signs of struggle or wound. So maybe it was his mind.
Which, for one, is a terrifying thought.
Yeah.
I'll talk more analysis about the cult and stuff like that at the end. But the idea that Cthulhu can communicate with people through dreams and visions, and he can effectively choose his congregants at any given point from anywhere in the world, then you could be, the safest place imaginable. You could be in a place where no Cthulhu cult members would ever get you, and then, oops, look at that, your roommate had a dream that he's supposed to stab you for the fish god.
Yep, that's scary. It's like, but again, one thing that we always trust is our own minds. No, I'm not saying we should always trust our own minds, but it is something that we always do trust, right? You always trust your brain. And it's so fucking scary if your brain could get corrupted, if you can't trust your mind or the minds of the people around you. I think so many people perceive other people as to have a similar mindset to you. Like, everyone tries to talk to other people. It's like, what would I do in that situation? And then you think that they'll probably do the same thing, because everyone thinks that they're wired the same way other people are wired, right? You walk into an elevator and you're staring at him and he's staring at you, and you're both thinking, wow, he probably thinks that it's just as awkward that I'm staring at him as he's staring at me. Then your fucking social anxiety goes through the roof. It's like, the idea that that something so unhuman, that a moral so unhuman can just take someone else over is horrifying. It's harrowing. Like, think about it for a second. I assume that most people have some sort of moral standard, right? I assume I'm not gonna get murdered by people because they have morals, and also because they have laws, right? The law is you kill someone, the government fucks you in the ass. And also morals. For those reasons, I don't assume that every person I see is gonna kill me. But if some sort of higher power, some sort of abstract eldritch deity can corrupt their mind to the point that they don't have morals, they don't care about repercussions to their actions, that is so scary. You're living in absolute anarchy with a facade. See, like, I have this problem where I assume people have common sense. And turns out I'm proven wrong all the time. Literally proven wrong all the time. I assume people have common sense. Then Boogie 2988 goes to lie about having cancer and to scam his audience. Then oh God.
Whoops. Francis says that there was no more information he could find about the Cthulhu cult, so he kind of had to leave it on the shelf for a bit. Until one day, he was just browsing through some stuff, and then came across
browsing through some stuff. He was on page 4,000 of Pornhub. He was not able to find the right video for the day.
Newspaper from the Sydney Bulletin. This newspaper, again from Sydney, Australia, was dated as April the 18th of 1925. This is, if you'll recall, just a couple of weeks after all the strange occurrences that happened through March and early April of 1925. You know, the dreams, the visions, people going crazy, you get it.
Yeah,
the newspaper recounts the story of a ship called the Alert of Dunedin that was found with 1 crew member alive and 1 body on board. However, the 2 people found on the Alert of Dunedin had set out on a ship called the Enma some weeks earlier.
What? They came back on a different ship? Okay, that's spooky.
Originally, there were 6 people. Well, there were 6 more of them.
Damn.
There were 8 crewmen in total, and now there were only 2. So there's 6 unaccounted for. The one survivor, a man named Gustav Johansson.
That's a name. Holy shit. Gustav Johansson?
Would later tell the tale, or at least most of the tale. Gustav said that on March the 22nd, him and his crew were attacked by a group of effectively pirates aboard the Alert.
Gustav, yo, dreaming. Don't give it up, Luffy, dreaming. Don't give it up, Zolo, dreaming. Don't give it up, give it up, give it up.
Said that the men
Here's how the story goes. There's no doubt that the Cthulhu in the fucking race war don't shout.
aboard the Alert fought with a savagery with their hands and teeth, and that the members of the Enma were able to fight them off, although cannon fire had caused their ship to sink. So the 6 crew members boarded the Alert and began to follow it on its predetermined course.
All right.
For some reason, the men now commandeering the Alert were compelled to see where the ship was originally heading.
Why?
Gustav says that they made it
Compelled, like they were like, we must find it. We must, without even knowing why, or they just wanted to.
to an island, and then something happened, and now there were 6 men missing.
Oh shit.
Now, why would any of this matter to Francis,
Good
right?
question.
It's just a story of a pirate attack in the ocean.
Yeah.
Well, not only did it occur again on the week that all of the occurrences happened, according to his great uncle, but also the newspaper mentioned that the sole survivor, Gustav Johansson, was clutching a small statue when he was found. So,
Oh shit. Oh shit. Like, it's a story that seems reasonable. It's like, oh god, it's so sad that these people were going on a boat and things were happening and he got attacked by pirates and it was sad and he was holding a statue. It's so scary. It's like everything is nice and normal until they mention the fucking octopus statue. It's like, and everything, and like it changes the context of everything. It's like these savages with no morals attacked them, and you're like, okay, whatever. There was an octopus statue on board for some reason that we're just mentioning now. Not that it probably matters in any way, but it was there. It was just there in the background. Like, that's so much scarier.
Francis seeks out this story immediately. He travels to Australia. He traces from his friends to pubs he visited. He goes everywhere trying to locate Gustav, eventually discovering that Gustav moved home with his wife. However, when Francis finally locates his home, all he finds is Gustav's widow. His widow says that after whatever happened at sea, he was never the same. More specifically, she says that he was walking through the dock when suddenly a bundle of papers falling from an attic window had knocked him down.
Okay.
And that killed him. But again, it
What?
points to suspicious deaths before.
Wait, dude, no, bro didn't die to a bundle of papers. Dude, Lovecraft, what is wrong with you, man? You can't do this to your characters. You know, at least give them the Game of Thrones treatment. Let them get killed by some tragic shit, betrayal, I don't know.
Falling people
He got killed by falling papers. Paper beats rock, I guess.
who know too much about this story. The widow says that there were only a group of papers that he left behind that he simply said were technical matters. It's to be noted that Gustav's wife only spoke Dutch, and Gustav wrote these letters in English, supposedly so she couldn't read it. Francis takes these papers and upon reading them, finds out what really happened to the crew of the Enma.
Uh-oh.
Johansson, thank God, did not know quite all, even though he saw the city and the thing, but I shall never sleep calmly again when I think of the horrors that lurk ceaselessly behind life in time and in space.
Yeah, no fucking sailor is writing like this. Okay, dude, listen, you that's cute and all, and it's definitely awesome, but no sailor that sees a monster is gonna write like, I shall never sleep calmly again when I think of the horrors that lurk ceaselessly beyond life and time and space. But yeah, that's a good description.
And if those unhallowed
blasphemies from elder stars which dreams
Yeah.
beneath the sea,
Holy shit, man's writing poetry.
known and favored by a nightmare cult, ready and eager to loose them upon the world whenever another earthquake shall heave their monstrous stone city again to the sun and air.
I don't know. I feel like if this would be written by an Australian sailor, there would be a lot more Billy butchering the talk. I don't know. I feel like those giant fucking sea monsters out there, motherfucking pieces of shit behind the seas. They came out there. There's fucking, I'm not gonna say the C word because that gets demonetized on YouTube. Those fucking, like, dude, that's what I would expect. Big fucking tentacle looking motherfucker, face fucking piece of shit, right? That's what I want to hear.
Everything seems to follow the account that Gustav gave the paper up until they make it to the island, which he describes as such. I suppose that only a single mountaintop, the hideous monolith-crowned citadel whereon great Cthulhu was buried,
Oh, damn.
actually emerged from the waters.
Oh, damn.
When I think of the extent of all that may be brooding down there, I almost wish to kill myself forthwith. Johansen and his men were awed by the cosmic majesty of this dripping Babylon of elder demons, and must have guessed without
Such a good description, though. Like, I can't even be upset. Like, this is such a beautiful description. A description of something so ancient and so terrifying.
guidance that it was nothing of this or of any sane planet. Awe at the unbelievable size of the greenish stone blocks, at the dizzying height of the great carven monolith, and at the stupefying identity of the colossal statues and bas-reliefs with the queer image found in the shrine on the alert.
Queer image? Queer image! Someone get Synthetic Man on the line. Lovecraft is promoting woke propaganda again.
Is poignantly visible in every line of the mate's frightened description. Without knowing what futurism is like, Johansen achieved something very close to it when he spoke of the city.
Yeah, you know my favorite actor, Scarlett Johansson?
Instead of describing any definite structure or building, he dwells only on broad impressions of vast angles and stone surfaces. Surfaces too great to belong to anything right or proper for this earth, and impious with horrible images and hieroglyphs.
Okay.
I mention his talk about angles because it suggests something Wilcox had told me of his awful dreams.
Oh, shit.
He said that the geometry of the dream place he saw was abnormal, non-Euclidean.
Are you joking me? So I knew that non-Euclidean geometry was a thing in Lovecraft, but no one sees shit and is like, oh my god, it's non-Euclidean geometry. Like, dude, this is gonna take forever to explain. But anyway, when I was looking into this before, it seemed really random that the non-Euclidean geometry has to keep getting referenced. It's like, I feel like Lovecraft is the type of guy that something he doesn't understand, so because he doesn't understand it, it scares him. So since it scares him, he puts it in his horror books, and he's like, all of the non-Euclidean geometry! Listen, I could be wrong here. Maybe I'm just being a Neanderthal, but I feel like it's you don't just look at a pillar and it's like, oh my god, all that non-Euclidean geometry is fucking me up right now.
And loathsomely redolent of spheres and dimensions apart from ours. Now, an unlettered seaman felt the
Seaman?
same thing whilst gazing at the terrible reality.
Now that's so interesting. Like the idea that this super scientist guy, super ultra mega scientist, he sees shit and he describes it like non-Euclidean geometry, ancient horrifying beings, and he sees it in a vision, right? When you hear shit like that, you're just gonna ignore that because, dude, it's a fucking dream. But then when someone else, somewhere across the world, has the same fucking vision, a sailor, not a scientist, and describes it the same way, like.
Now this is fascinating, that all the way back in the 1940s, Lovecraft began to mention concepts, and this isn't the only time he mentions them in his work, but through his writings, mentions concepts of non-Euclidean architecture.
Oh, I'm so happy he's bringing this up. Holy shit, let's fucking go Wendigoon.
Or
more like the Wendigoat.
Of shapes and angles that show.
Unlike that you've ever seen! It falls under the same category that I was mentioning earlier, where he's like, it is a sound unlike the like anyone's ever heard, a non-human shape, the like of which has never been seen before. Colors coming everywhere. You've never seen colors, like colors the way that we've seen these colors. a material that was used for the statue, something like anything we've ever seen. Like, it's hilarious that they do that shit every single time. Also, it's a really fucking, it's a really good, yeah, it's a winner right there.
Shouldn't make sense, but do. Like, they're almost on several different points of existence at once. The men make it to this stone pyre and begin to climb up it, eventually coming to this great shape that they describe as massive barn doors. We're not explicitly told how tall this thing is, but it's tall enough that you can park a ship on it and walk up to it. And I imagine, considering what happens in a minute, very big. As the men are looking around the edges of the rock...
You know what else is very big? Wilcox Seaman. That wasn't funny.
One of them climbs near the top of the door, and upon pressing in, the door begins to open.
Ooh.
And in describing what happened next, the story says this.
The aperture was black with the darkness almost material. That tenebrousness was indeed a positive quality, for it obscured such parts of the inner walls as ought to have been revealed, and actually burst forth like smoke from its eon-long imprisonment, visibly darkening the sun as it slunk away into the shrunken and gibbous sky on flapping, membranous wings.
Bro, I love how well he describes the horror. A shrunken and gibbous sky, flapping in membranous wings.
The odor rising from the newly opened depths was intolerable.
It was like Asmongold's bedroom, but worse.
And at length, the quick-eared Hawkins thought he heard a nasty, slopping sound down there. Everyone listened, and everyone was listening still when it lumbered slobberingly into sight and gropingly squeezed its gelatinous green immensity through the black doorway into the tainted outside air of that poisoned city of madness.
Bruh.
Poor Johansson's writing almost gave out when he wrote of this. Of the 6 men who never reached the ship, he thinks 2 perished of pure fright in that accursed instant. The thing cannot be described.
Bruh.
There is no language for such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy.
That's the thing. You can't describe these things. Like, all the descriptions he's giving, he in his very descriptions, because he's really going in deep detail. Membranous wings flapping silently, right? Like that whole shit. Like, and then he says it can't be comprehended and be described. It's like he'll describe it and then he'll say, and it's also indescribable. You know, it makes this strange slurping sound. It's like he'll use incredibly detailed words to describe shit, and then he'll say they're contradictory and undescribable. Like, it goes to show that, like, the more details you look for, the more you recognize that it can't be described, right? Like, the thing can't be described. There's no language for the abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy. And then he'll get into idols, green sticky spawn of the stars, like membranous wings, and it gets into the details.
Such eldritch contradictions of all matter, force, and cosmic order. A mountain walked or stumbled. God, what wonder that across the earth a great architect went mad and poor Wilcox raved with fever in that telepathic instant. The thing of the idols, the green sticky spawn of the stars, had awaked to claim his own. The stars were right again, and what an age-old cult had failed to do by design, a band of innocent sailors had done by accident. After vigitillions of years, great Cthulhu was loose again.
Yeah, your boy is back! Let's fucking go!
Ravening for delight.
It's in this thing's resurrection that 6 of the men are killed at once, 3 of them in a single swoop of its claw. Gustav and one crewmate make it to the boat and begin to sail away as this giant monstrous creature begins to swim after them, faster and greater than the ship itself. Gustav, realizing that they're not going to outrun it, turns the ship around and rams it directly into the creature's head.
I love this. This is what everyone is so mad about this moment in this story. This was the one thing I knew about the actual Call of Cthulhu story before getting into this. Like, I knew the details of the lore and shit, but I didn't actually know the progression of the storyline, the encroaching cosmic horror upon the mind of, Francis. God, why the fuck did they name him Francis? But dude, this that you're about to hear is made power scalers and lore divers upset for generations.
They're not going to outrun it.
Right? And Eldritch horror, Cthulhu, indescribable, miles tall. All right, let's fucking wrap your head around it. Wrap your head around the thing that you cannot comprehend, okay?
Turns the ship around and rams it directly into the creature's head. After Gustav looks back after the ship rammed into its head and ripped out a massive chunk of its flesh, he says, "The scattered plasticity of that nameless sky spawn was nebulously recombining in its hateful original form, whilst its distance widened every second as the alert gained impetus from its mounting steam." In other words,
he killed it! In other words, he killed it!
Was regenerating.
Oh, it was regenerating. That's what I meant. But wait. So I was thinking of a different part of the book, I guess. All right. Yeah, no, but I do love that he fucking, like, look at this paragraph. The scattered plasticity of the nameless sky spawn was nebulously recombining in its hateful original form, whilst its distance widened every second as the alert gained impetus. It regenerated. It regenerated, guys. Dude, this is classic Lovecraft.
After this, Gustav began to lose his mind. He didn't really care where the ship was going. He just began to wander around the deck, his crewmate laughing maniacally until death found him.
Oh, good.
Eventually, Gustav was found by a passing ship, and we know the rest of the story from there. But Francis is troubled.
Okay, I'm thinking of I think a part at the end of the book, because the way they kill him is something that people have been complaining about for eons.
By all of this. Of course he is. It seems that everything the cult envisioned has come to be.
Yeah. What fucked up so many people is the idea that, like, you have these cults, you have these visions. Every time you hear different people having the same dreams again and again and again, you know, every fucking time, you're always wondering, okay, same dreams again. Same dreams again, I guess. Sure, okay. I suppose they have again the same dreams. But it's still just dreams. It's still fake. It's still not real. And your own mind is just like their mind is tricking them and polluting them. Your mind is constantly reassuring yourself that it's all fake. Your mind is telling you, no, it's just dreams. It's just visions. Visions aren't real. It's just crazy cult people. It's nothing. It's nothing, guys. And then you see the fucking monster and you're like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I gaslighted myself.
And now, the only one who has all the pieces and knows exactly what happened is Francis, the only surviving investigator of the Cthulhu cult. And the story ends on his words.
Cthulhu still lives too, I suppose, again in that chasm of stone which has shielded him since the sun was young. His accursed city is sunken once more, for the Vigilance sailed over the spot after the April storm, but his ministers on earth still bellow and prance and slay around idol-capped monoliths in lonely places. He must have been trapped by the sinking whilst within his black abyss, or else the world would by now be screaming with fright and frenzy.
Well, for whatever reason, they injured him, they damaged him by just ramming a boat into him, and it maddens everybody. One thing that Wendigan, I think he didn't mention here, was the fact that when they hit him with the boat, blood just poured out. Like, copious amounts of blood poured out of Cthulhu's head where they rammed the boat into him. And I know the going theory that a lot of people have is that the reason why all this blood kept pouring out is because it's the blood sacrifices of humanity that gives it the ability to manifest in the human world. And because of that, when they crashed in the boat into him and they injured him, and the blood poured out, by the blood all pouring out, it was like the whatever it had that helped it maintain physical form got lost, and therefore, since it got lost, it was no longer able to maintain a corporeal form. Don't ask Keemstar what that means. He doesn't know. I asked him on the podcast, and he had no idea. But, like, as a simple example, I just went through Bloodborne lore, because, as you know, I, Lord Nuxanor, consume all lore. Definitely subscribe for lore. Subscribe for more lore! But the point that I'm trying to make is, in Bloodborne, you have this idea that everyone keeps using blood sacrifices and blood magic in order to bring down eldritch deities into the physical reality. And by destroying the blood, they destroyed the ability for the eldritch horror to maintain its physicality in this world. So by crashing the boat into him and releasing a lot of this blood, it just lost the ability to maintain physical form. Not that they fucking injured it so badly and it ran away. Anyway, that's That's the going theory that I actually subscribe to. I like that in my power scaling Lovecraft mythos video, big fucking 3-hour video. I actually, we go through it. I think Literary Who is the guy that came up with this, which I thought was a banger idea. Blood over there. Blood got beaten by a boat. Blood lost to a boat.
Who knows the end? What has risen...
So if you nuke Cthulhu and the blood gets evaporated, he'd be toast. It loses the horror factor. Well, it sort of loses the horror factor, but it also sort of doesn't. It needs the blood to maintain physical form. But remember, Cthulhu is but a priest, and it also doesn't kill Cthulhu. It just helps Cthulhu. It just knocks him off from the physical plane until he finds another way back by taking over more people's minds. But basically what I'm trying to say is Goku would get stomped by Cthulhu, and Cthulhu would get stomped by a boat. That's the power scaling we're going with here. Yeah. That's the power scaling that we're working with. I think it's very important to recognize. See, on Twitter, people power scale all the time. As a simple example, let me see if I can find this tweet. Yeah, so here you have people on Twitter power scaling grooming. Who you got in a groom off, right? Two groomers. Who's the better groomer? Ladies and gentlemen, this is classic power scaling. So if you could power scale grooming, then I am gonna fucking power scale boats. Okay, shut the fuck up.
May sink and what has sunk may rise. Loathsomeness waits and dreams in the deep. Decay spreads.
The deep. He's my favorite hero. I love the deep.
The tottering cities of men. A time will come, but I must not and cannot think. Let me pray that, if I do not survive this manuscript, my executors may put caution before audacity and see that it meets no other eye.
Oh shit.
And if you remember, the story opened with the lines that these were found among the belongings of the late Francis Thurston. And with
oh shit. So Francis is dead now.
that, we have the end of Call of Cthulhu.
That's how the book ends? I told you it ended with him crashing a boat into his head and he loses somehow corporeal form. Brother. Okay, that is awesome. That's awesome. So that's the story of Cthulhu. Ultimately, no success is found, no solution is found, no humans are important, and we are all but playthings to the cosmic gods invading our minds. We would do well to shield our minds from knowledge too scary and too eldritch in nature. It's a fucking cool moral.
So what is there to say about it?
All
well,
right.
obviously the thing that Lovecraft is known for the most is cosmic horror, right? Which, in effect, or at least in its application here, is the horror of something beyond comprehension. Think about it this way. Pretty much all of human beliefs, or at least things like human religions, revolve around humanity, right? Like through Christianity, Buddhism, what have you. Humanity was created by, a divine being or a divine system, and then everything that exists kind of within relation to humanity. But Lovecraft is stretching to say, what if we are nothing more than a speck on the radar for something we can't even comprehend?
Yeah, that's basically what I've been saying. That's why he became the godfather of cosmic horror, because there are all sorts of horrors, but generally the horrors in horror stories are something that cares about us. That's the fear, that this thing is gonna suck me into another dimension and give me a rim job, right? That's fucking scary, right? Like the idea of something that wants me dead, it wants me hurt, it wants me mentally scarred, it wants to torture or contort me. Like that's what horror was, until Lovecraft really came to the scene and implemented this idea of, what if the horror is that you are but a side effect? Your death, destruction, and demise and mental dilapidation is but a side effect of these cosmic beings doing whatever the fuck they want.
Something that dies and then undies as the stars change. What if it is going to come alive again, and when it does, it will rip from us everything we understand about existence and give us something more terrible in its place? And the real horror of it is, not only is it an insurmountable opponent, right? This isn't even a question of, could we defeat Cthulhu?
No, we cannot defeat Cthulhu. The end. The end. That's why it's better to just not know. Like, this is like a take I've been making for a while. Like, a lot of people stress about things, and I say, listen, why stress about it? If there's a nuclear apocalypse and the Earth gets destroyed, if a fucking the Andromeda galaxy crashes into the Milky Way galaxy and all life as we know it is completely halted because our sun goes supernova and we all die, then we're all dead. There's nothing we can fucking do about that. If our sun goes supernova, we're cooked. We are literally cooked. So why are you gonna worry about that? It's irrelevant. It does not matter if you worry. So just ignore it. Don't think about it.
It's that Cthulhu is one piece of a larger puzzle.
Yeah, the irony is Cthulhu is but a mere priest.
That we were never meant to even know exists. Because how could we ever hope to outlive or best an opponent that we can't even hope to comprehend? And in that regard, I think the story does a good job of it. We have this individual, Francis, who's trying to put these pieces together, and the conclusion he comes to is that everything's hopeless and he's going to die.
Yeah, I like that that's the final conclusion too, right? Like, as he puts it together slowly, he finds one person with dreams, one person with visions, one person insane, one person that died mysteriously, one person in a cult somewhere worshiping this entity, and then actual real-life evidence that this thing is real. And the conclusion is nihilism. It's over.
Which is pretty much the end point for most cosmic horror, at least this kind. I also find it interesting that, again, all the way back then, he was playing with ideas of, like, you know, geometry that shouldn't work the way it does or isn't shaped the way it is.
Colors unlike the which you've ever seen!
A lot of that we see kind of, you know, reinvigorated in modern culture, but it's insane to think that it was happening 100 years ago. Now, all of that being said, is it a good read?
Please say no, because to be honest, I tried, and it was boring as shit, and it was very verbose, and I love the concepts so much. The concepts are fucking goated, but the actual story, like, as reading material?
I guess.
Ah! Pussy shit, it's not a good read. It is so not a good read.
It's not.
I tried. I'll have you know, I do my lore dives. I do my lore dives, and I also read, okay? I try, okay? This didn't work. Reading Lovecraft didn't do it for me.
Really a narrative in a way that, like, we're watching characters change turn. It's more like a documentation. It's just an individual compiling things that did happen and then saying that they're going to die at the end. Funny enough, it's like a lot of modern horror on YouTube, but I don't want to indulge that rabbit hole. There's not really a
the Wendigooner call out.
A story per se. Again, it's just kind of like a series of things that happened. Now, again, the purpose of that documentation was to get across the point of the cosmic horror mentioned, you know, throughout the story.
Yeah.
And in that job, it succeeded.
No. Conceptually, it is a glaring success. Conceptually, Lovecraft is the godfather of modern horror. And again, that's why I'm making the fucking video on the impact of Lovecraftian horror. But as an individual read, like, you want to sit down on your couch and read a book at the end of a tough day? Fuck. Listen, I didn't get through it.
But does that make it a good read? Not necessarily. The concepts and the things you pull out of it are far more interesting than any character or any twist or turn within the tale.
See, the irony is when it comes to something like Warhammer, Warhammer 40k, as you know, I have been diving into the lore because there is so much lore. It's not the concepts and lore that's interesting about the books. The books are interesting because the actual character development and character journeys. Just about random people that you wouldn't think to care about. And, like, I've read snippets and excerpts of different chapters of different Warhammer books as well. And, like, the way you have, like, the story as it evolves. Like, I read this one chapter because I've been looking into different chapters to try to figure out where I could break into the different endless rabbit hole of Warhammer lore. And you have these stories. It paints these pictures of this space marine that's standing there, and a Tau woman is sitting on the floor in front of him. And she's like, no, please, do you not have any honor? Do you not care about anything? Like, are you just gonna kill me? I am but a whammon, a little whammon on the ground. Do you have no honor that you would kill me? What would your father think? What would your emperor think? And then the space marine starts thinking about it. And he's like, for the emperor. And then he fucking stomps on her chest and crushes her. Like, he crushes her ribs and lungs and heart. Like, it paints a picture. It's like, oh, God. Like, it's fucked up. It's a little fucked up.
It's more interesting as a basis for information than a basis for narrative. I don't even think that Lovecraft was necessarily going for a heavy narrative in this story. He even regarded it as one of his kind of mediocre works.
Yeah.
Even though this would...
Ironically, it's the most iconic of his works, but yeah, as a book, it just... As a narrative, it doesn't flow.
Become one of his more popular works. Lovecraft also has... I hate to say the word universe because that's so overdone. But he has like a kind of connected lore through a lot of his stories.
Yeah, I wouldn't use universe either because the universe is only a really tiny part of Lovecraft lore. A lot of people call it like the Lovecraft cinematic universe. And it's like, no. That's why I call it the mythos, because it doesn't, that's what I call it. I call it the Lovecraft mythos.
And it's not in the way you would think of like, oh, Cthulhu shows up in another story because you have to read this one to influence that one. It's kind of just he uses inspiration from some of his mythos onto other mythos. So you'll see like the name Cthulhu or like Rilya or something like that pop up in other stories.
Yeah, because there does seem to be some sort of hierarchy when it comes to his mythos, except he's writing his stories, and this is the really interesting idea. Lovecraft writes his stories from the human perspective, and from the human perspective, we would never ever comprehend the connections between Cthulhu and Azathoth and Nyarlathotep and all these crazy, horrifying deities that he's creating and writing about. But while from their perspective there is some sort of relation, from ours there can't be. And therefore, when he writes it, it seems like they're all completely disconnected and discombobulated, just referencing each other.
But it's not like there's one connected narrative between them.
Yeah.
It's just you'll see the same names mentioned, which almost works better than a connected narrative in the the cosmic horror scene.
For sure, because the idea is you are so irrelevant, you matter so fucking little that you would not even perceive a storyline going on between these cosmic entities. If we, humans, would be integral to the storyline of these cosmic entities, it diminishes their power so much.
Because it's like these creatures don't care if we understand what happened or understand their timeline of events.
Bingo!
They're simply...
I'm so happy we have a similar understanding of Lovecraftian horror. Bro, I love Wendigoon's analysis of shit.
just there. Now, there's some issues within the story present that I think are worth addressing. Like, for example, the racism within the story.
Like, you don't even make the joke. Oh my god, that's a fucking screenshot and a half. Dude, Wendigoon has so many good screenshots. The scrapbook is gonna look real good after this, baby. It's gonna look real good, real nice, real nice.
And not just to address, like, oh, racism bad. I mean, it was a white dude writing in the 1930s. Duh. But
yeah, not the biggest surprise. But yeah, no, it's worth mentioning.
To address how it doesn't even
I can't wait until Synthetic Man calls out Wendigoon for being woke, that he doesn't like racism.
really work within the narrative itself. So a lot of people point out Lovecraft specifically as being like the most racist author ever.
He definitely wasn't, but at the same time, he was pretty racist.
And yes, he was very much so. We all know what he named his cat. But if you read...
Yeah! The cat! Let's go! The African-American man cat. That's what we're talking about. Let's freaking go.
literature from around that time,
That guy's crazy.
racism to that degree is pretty common.
Yeah.
I think it's more noticeable with Lovecraft because he chooses to base a lot of his stories around it. Like, for example...
Like, he has stories where... Whatever, I don't even want to say it, but, like, he has stories that you look at, and it's like, oh, that race are just they're just the bad guys. Okay, that's cool. I love that.
Example in the story when I was talking about the cult south of New Orleans, or the people near Greenland, or the people in India, or stuff like that. In the story, they are explicitly described as mongrels, or lesser breeds, or lower races, or what have you.
That's pretty fucked up.
So what he's doing is implying that groups of people who are of lower intelligence or lower intellect, as Lovecraft sees it, are more susceptible to Cthulhu's calling.
Bro, God, like, he makes other races more susceptible to Cthulhu because they are of lower intellect. Holy shit, that's insane. No, but, like, I mentioned in the video that I'm working on about Lovecraft, the racism shit, and just to make sure everyone's aware, Lovecraft is described as a white supremacist on every single platform he talks about. Like, This is important. Dude, Lovecraft showed sympathy to minorities who adopted Western culture, even to the extent of marrying a Jewish woman he viewed as well assimilated. Like, oh, you know, it's okay because he's well assimilated. So, you know, that's okay. Man, that's fine because he's well assimilated. So, you know, yeah, no, it is wild. Yikes. He has so much. In his early published essays, private letters, and personal utterances, he argued for a strong color line to preserve race and culture. Ew! 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 Anyway, like, man, they should not have let him cook that hard. That's what I'm trying to say.
And the reason that doesn't make sense narratively is because there's also people like Wilcox who are susceptible to Cthulhu's calling. People who are explicitly called genius by the story. Furthermore, if that is what the story's going with, if the people, or, you know, the lessers, as Lovecraft views them, are the ones actually worshiping Cthulhu, because people like Wilcox didn't know what they were doing. They saw visions and then they painted it, right? He's not worshiping Cthulhu. If the people who are worshiping Cthulhu are these, like, dumb people, as the story sees them,
God,
then aren't they right? Like, think about it. This isn't a religion as we know it. It's not like, oh, well, maybe this god exists, maybe that god doesn't, whatever. No, Cthulhu is objectively real. This is the religion. This is how the world works now.
well, I don't know if it's a religion. It's just something real. The reason why I wouldn't take it this far is because Cthulhu is definitely real. But the concept of a religion generally is you're worshiping something that gets something out of your worship, right? For whatever reason, it wants you to worship them. Cthulhu, it wants people to worship them to the extent that it wants to just make blood sacrifices and shit. The idea in every other religion is that worshiping these gods is, for whatever reason, the gods like you to some extent. But in this, it doesn't necessarily need to be a religion as much as just some incredibly powerful creature. You know what I mean? It's something super powerful, but that doesn't make it worship worthy.
You believe in Christianity? Sorry, looks like the squid thing is at the bottom of the ocean, so what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, well, maybe God created the squid thing, huh? Maybe there's some super god out there. Maybe Jesus is like, I don't see this as debunking other religions, even within the Lovecraft world, you know? Like, you don't have to worship this like a god. We call it a god. The term god that's used for the Lovecraftian gods is not the same as the word god that we use to define a divine deity that created everything. Like, that is not the same. Like, there is a god in Lovecraftian mythos. There are the good guys of Lovecraft mythos. So I don't know if I completely agree with this point.
If that is how...
Like, these guys are called the other gods. Meaning there is the one true god, but these are the other gods, like the really powerful reality warping pieces of shit that are here too, but you know,
universe works, and that's inevitable.
It's not capital G God.
Then that means that the worshippers are the only people that are right.
I don't know. I don't see it from that perspective. I see the worshippers as people that got corrupted by Cthulhu, but Cthulhu is completely apathetic towards humanity. Like, they're not right. They're right that it exists, but they aren't right to completely be willing to sacrifice their lives and people for it.
Like, sure, it's bad. Like, it's not good to sacrifice people to an evil squid thing.
Right,
but if his resurrection's inevitable and the world's going to be destroyed, then they win.
They don't win. They die too. They lose their sense of self and humanity by becoming part of these cults. I don't know. I very much don't view them as, like, they enlightened ones. They're not enlightened. They're mind-controlled, brainwashed. I don't know. He's a demon. God warned you about this guy. When God said don't do blood sacrifices for false idols and false gods, this is who God was talking about. You know? Like, that's more the perspective that I would have looking at this.
There's also a lot of stuff that just kind of happens. It doesn't really bother me because, again, the narrative isn't the story's strong suit. It's the ideas that are getting across that are the story's strong suit.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, he just so happens to find the newspaper. Like, he's like, well, anyway, I couldn't worry about Cthulhu anymore. Then one day I find a newspaper about Cthulhu. There's stuff like that happens.
Again, you could say that that's bad writing, but you could also say that there is some sort of divine presence that subconsciously made him reach for that newspaper, right?
There were also a couple of other things that I wanted to mention about the story that I forgot to on the initial recording, but I don't want to set all of that up again, so you're
Based post-editing Wendigoon with the better microphone.
getting podcast Wendigoon. Congratulations.
Yeah.
For one, I think my biggest problem with the actual, narrative of the story is, so Cthulhu's described throughout this whole thing as being like this impossible to understand god. He only is alive when the stars are right. He has existed for years, unfathomable, whatever, right? And then when he finally rises from Relia, he is stopped
by a guy ramming a boat. Oh god, he's not doing this.
by a boat.
No! Again, I told you my game theory on it. The boat hit it, it somehow leaked the blood out. The blood was how it manifests into reality. I did too much lore diving. Listen, as someone reading the book, because this guy, he read the book, okay? I didn't read the book. I did the lore dive first. I came about this the wrong order. From the perspective of reading the book, I would also complain about this same shit.
All you have to do is hit him with a boat. And sure, it doesn't kill him. It talks about him regenerating or whatever. Maybe he was charging up power. But with the description that Cthulhu had gotten up until this point, I figured that,
that a boat wouldn't be enough.
You could, hurl a planet at him and it would just pass through him. Like, he's incomprehensible. Lovecraft even says in the story, he is not made of matter.
Correct, because So he's right. All these things are complaints, and I don't know if they were retconned later, but you're right. Cthulhu is not made of matter. However, Cthulhu, to manifest in reality, it needs to make itself some sort of flesh body, and it makes this flesh body out of the blood from blood sacrifices. So when they pop the blood sack or whatever, and it just lost hold of physicality. Not that it's actually injured.
His form is formless or whatnot, but you can hit him with a boat, and that KOs him.
Yeah, we got to talk about. I got to call Wendigoon and talk about Lovecraftian mythos. But no, he's 100% right. Like, reading the book, it is mega annoying. I'm sure it's mega annoying to see that you have this eldritch creature that's being praised forever, and then it just gets hit with a boat and dies. But if you actually look at the Lovecraftian mythos, it does. I'm not gonna say it makes sense because it's still cringe, but it makes more sense because he is still formless. His true form is formless and not existing in reality. This Cthulhu that was hit by the boat is just an avatar of Cthulhu that he made through the blood of blood sacrifices.
Apparently. So every 200 years, if we just have a boat ready to go in front of the city, that should do the trick. I don't know, it just seems kind of dumb that that's all it takes to stop an incomprehensible god. Now, don't get me wrong, I love that whole sequence. I think it's really cool, especially the mention that it was at this exact same moment that Cthulhu rose from the sunken city, that across the world, Wilcox went into a hysteria and began speaking of statues and stuff. It's so cool to imagine that all the people who were receiving dreams were kind of activated at one moment. This was some cosmic occurrence.
Yeah, cosmic sleeper agents all woke up. That's fucked up. Yeah, Order 66. The inhibitor chips went online.
I love that. It's the boat that I have a problem with.
Yeah, I hear you. Again, I'm trying to explain it the best that I can in my understanding of the lore. It's obviously not perfect, but yeah.
I also want to give one.
It also doesn't stop it. It just delays the inevitable. Like, okay, so we'll rise up 200 years later. Like, he cares. Like, 200 years matters to this guy.
Last thought about, Lovecraft as a horror author in general. A lot of Lovecraft's horror revolves around concepts of things like misanthropy. And it seems that throughout his writing, this hatred of humanity runs pretty deep for him. Institutions like religion are looked down upon, institutions of government, institutions of different races or groups of people. There is a consistent mistrust of any faculty of man. And
is it man or mind? I think what he really hates is anything that's the mind of humanity. So he'll constantly poke and prod at the human mind. The way human mind is illogical or immoral in regards to religion or government or whatever.
And I think a lot of that comes from Lovecraft's own life. Both of Lovecraft's parents were institutionalized for mental breakdowns, having a mental condition. You know, it was like the early 1900s, so we didn't have the best documentation for that kind of thing, but they were described as having fits or seeing things that weren't there. And there's some historical evidence to suggest that Lovecraft either inherited or developed something of a similar condition. I think it's safe to say that Lovecraft was definitely an agoraphobic. He lived with his mother for a very long time, up until her being committed, and most of his interaction with the outside world seemed to be through stories and books he would read.
Oh, that's so tragic, man. It's like it goes to show that the most fucked up people are because they were in fucked up environments. So sad. Like, I wish we could save everyone, you know?
In the last 10, 20 years of his life, he would get married, he would meet more people, he would become more accepting of the outside world. But in most of his writing, we see that infection of the idea that humanity is wicked or contains great wickedness. And because of that, I find his writing to be from such an interesting perspective. Because normally with like...
Because I love humanity. I hate most humans. No, that's not true. I love most people, I'd say. I'd go as far as to say as I like most people. Unless they're liars or pieces of shit. Yeah, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I'm just wholesome. What can I say? I'm the most wholesome YouTuber on the platform. If you subscribe, you know that.
Say a horror author will have story of humanity being the protagonist or the thing to be cherished, and the monster or the creature or the other of the narrative being the thing to be feared. But in Lovecraft's work, it's almost like humanity is in on the plot. Like, think about here in Call of Cthulhu.
Okay.
We have
interesting perspective. I didn't look at it that way. All right.
Great mighty god that looks to destroy life as...
See, in Lovecraft horror, I don't see the humans as, in my personal, very nuanced lore dive experience, I thought that he didn't look at humans as the good guys nor the bad guys. Humanity just exists and is irrelevant. Like, it's not on any side.
As we know it, effectively. And then we have all these different groups around the world who are worshiping him and want that to happen. It's almost like there is a conspiracy within humanity aimed against itself. And because of that, because humans are often the unknown variable in the equation of his stories, I think it makes for interesting tales. Because perhaps if anyone else was writing a story like Call of Cthulhu, the one hope we would have is that humanity could be united against this threat. But in Lovecraft stories, humanity is part of that threat.
That's really interesting. That's a really good perspective. I did not look at that. I didn't look at it from that perspective. Humanity's part of the threat. I don't know. I just saw it as humanity is irrelevant to the threat. I thought that was the horror. That humanity can't stop it. Uniting won't help. Nothing matters, ultimately, and that is the horror. The horror is that humanity, even united, can't do shit. I didn't look at it as the threat. That's an interesting perspective.
And in my opinion, that creates a true nihilistic horror in a way that few authors can attain. And I think that's pretty neat. At the end of the day, I think it's interesting, and I think the story itself is kind of cool, but I would also understand if you wanted to skip it. Now that being...
Yeah, I wouldn't read it, but the lore is fucking awesome, which is why I've made so many videos doing lore dives on Lovecraftian mythos. I think it's fascinating, and why I'm so excited to do this main channel video.
Instead, I think what is far more impressive than Lovecraft's actual writing is his impact.
Yeah. Yeah! I'm doing a whole video on that.
I mean, concepts of cosmic horror, you know, non-Euclidean spaces, things humans can't comprehend, is pretty much everywhere in horror fiction nowadays.
Yeah, it is the baseline. I can't think of anything horror that's made recently that isn't focused on, that isn't inspired by Lovecraft. It just goes to show.
And even works based directly on Lovecraft have a substantial following. Call of Cthulhu itself has an RPG game, a video game. It's been adapted into I don't know how many mythos and stories through the years. And honestly, you know what? If you want to see like the Lovecraft idea pushed full bore, I think like one of the best interpretations you can do with it, go watch the first season of True Detective. It is outright Lovecraft. It uses the names like the Yellow King and stuff like that.
That's wild. Oh my god. I mentioned the True Detective in my video because I looked into it. I didn't realize it was that heavily impacted.
From like Lovecraft or Lovecraft adjacent fiction or whatever. It's even set in Louisiana. The difference is in Lovecraft's story, the monster or the god or whatever is explicitly real. The horror is, the cosmic horror exists. Whereas
The horror in True Detective is the question of, does it exist?
Okay, wait. I might actually watch this for research. True Detective. 4 seasons, made in 2014, rated 8.9. God damn. Okay. Okay. All right. Where do you watch this shit? Fuck, I hate the streaming service. Oh my god, it's also on Max, it's on Hulu, it's on Apple TV. I fucking shit. I hate it.
So it
I hate streaming services.
It's more so in like the in-between, so to speak, rather than having the lessers of society being the practitioners of the religion. It is the elite of society, so therefore you kind of because
you get some Illuminati Satanist shit.
Because your whole
that's a fucking that's what I'm talking. Oh yeah, dude, the scrapbook is looking good today. Scrapbook looking good.
Cosmic existence is called into question. Maybe the elites understand something we don't. Maybe there's some hidden knowledge they have that we don't. Stuff like that. I think it's a more interesting use of good ideas that Lovecraft set out. So yeah, basically this whole video was a psyop. Go watch True Detective.
I will, all right? You psyoped me. You succeeded.
Heard a lot of people say that the Dunwich Horror or At the Mountain of Madness, which I haven't read, but I'm familiar with the plot of that one, are his best work. So
yeah, I am familiar with both of those. Yeah.
If you all want me to check those out, I would certainly be happy to.
All right. Well, hell yeah, dude.
But for now, this has been Call of Cthulhu. And if you thought the story was stupid, or you think I'm stupid, which at least one of those things are true, I don't care because you're still here. And I just want to say thank you for watching.
God, I love Wendigoon. He's such a wholesome man. I'm so excited. We're doing a pretty exciting collab. I don't want to spoil anything because it's a really fucking cool idea. Anyway, thank you all so much for being here. This has been the lore dive into Call of Cthulhu. Thank you to our tour guide. Again, we do have ultimately slightly different interpretations of shit, which I think is cool. I like the idea that art can elicit different interpretations of different people. I think that's what makes story and media so fucking awesome, and why I love doing what I do. I love looking at different lores and different stories and having my own perspective, as well as absorbing all these wonderful pieces of art from different areas and facets of the internet and reality. So thank you so much for joining me. This has been a big fucking video. You're probably not still here. I'm probably talking to no one right now. But if you are still here, definitely drop Tentacle Gang in the comment section. And 10,000 likes and we'll keep finding new Lovecraftian mythos to look into. And ladies and gentlemen, one of these following images will probably be on the thumbnail. All right, he's a beautiful man. He's a handsome fellow. He's a very handsome man. One of these will be the thumbnail of the video. Leave your bets. Leave your guesses. We got the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse right here. We'll see. Who knows? Who knows? We leave that to future Nuxanor to decide. Stay weird, fam. If you made it to the end, click one of these 2 videos, which also will definitely get me canceled. See you live on King. Stay weird, fam.